Your home can look gorgeous, smell clean, and still be quietly working against your health, because some of the biggest threats in our homes are the ones we can't see.
Mm-hmm.
I am chatting with building biologist Brian Johnson, who is going to walk us through the invisible toxin hotspots that we stroll by in our homes every day and could be why we feel tired and headachy and foggy. And as my aunt would say in Hebrew, shva, it's a very good word and I love it. So this is important stuff for you. It's for your kids, your clients. It's about 20 minutes, I think. And I've asked Brian to speak to me as if I'm 6 years old. And I'm not kidding, Brian. I might interrupt you if you get too techy. So I'm apologizing in advance.
I'm a builder, right? So
Yeah.
I was not to get into my story real quick, but just a little sneak peek. So my path was always in construction from a very young age, and then into the health and wellness industry, back to building, then taking a break from building, back into the health and wellness industry, then back to building, which is a home behind me here that I designed. And this was like my 1.0 of what a healthy home, like I needed to define my own terms of what a healthy home is.
Right.
What is it, right? Like, how are we going to share it to a contractor or with the client, or even guide the client on what to even ask or what to look for, kind of
even if you're not building a home, but just in your home. Like I
Right,
wanted to ask you, like you do home inspection. So I wanted to tell you,
Yeah.
okay, let's do this
Yeah.
way. Let's say I call you. I'm going to call you for one of two reasons. I have an existing home. I've been living there since 1980. And I'm calling you either because I'm not feeling well, I'm feeling off, I'm feeling weird, and I want to know if there's something going on in my home. I'm in my home and I started getting a little educated about this stuff. And I'm like, I wonder if there's stuff in my house that I feel good, but maybe long term is not so healthy. So walk me through an inspection with either one of those two scenarios. Like, what's the first thing you do?
So I get these calls all the time, and I do
Mhm.
assessments all over the country. The reason why I was bringing up as a builder is then when I found the Building Biology Institute, then
Yeah.
what it did is it enhanced those skills to basically go in as a consultant, an assessor, and an inspector to basically reverse engineer whether it's an existing structure, finding the underlying root causes, identifying them, and then, of course, coming up with the solutions moving forward. Okay. So, yes, so many different variables, different regions, different climates, zones, newer homes, older homes, you name it. I've been in there. I think I've become the house whisperer, really, because when I come to the house, I'm doing an intake form, I'm asking the client's history, what were they sick from, what they're affected by environmental illnesses, mold, toxicity, chemical.
Is mold typically the number one thing?
Mold is number one.
It is.
Absolutely, hands down,
So
Yeah.
you go into a home and you say, there's a lot of mold here. Where do you start? Do you go in the
Yeah.
kitchen, under the sink?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
This is perfect. So I actually start when I show up to the job before I even go through the front door. I can look at the home design, the roof, the pitch, how water's collecting. I'm looking, is water being shedded away from the roof into the gutters and away from the foundation? Is water coming off the roof and going back into the home? Is it sheeting down the windows? Is the house just saturated? Is it overgrowth with all kinds of landscape? The house will tell me a story before I even get into the house, right? To know, like, hey, there's, because say they did an intake and they're like, yeah, we're, suffering from mold or whatever, I'm looking at these signs right away. And so when I see the house, then I'm starting to put the story together even before I walk through the front door. Also, through power lines as well. I'm looking at, I don't know how far you wanted to share with the audience from an EMF perspective, like, is there cell towers close by? Are the power lines close by? Where's the transformers? All these things. So you got to really kind of look at the outside piece of the home before you even get into the inside.
So let's break that down. So let's say for people that are listening, so they would look at the outside of their home. And you mentioned something interesting about landscaping. So for example, having ivy up the beautiful stone walls, things like that I have actually in Hudson Valley. Is that like a mold trap?
It's a mold, pest, moisture. Absolutely, 100%. I know it looks beautiful, but from the physics side of building and mechanics, it's harboring all kinds of things within that, right? That space of, overgrowth of vegetation up against the house, because it allows pests to enter as well.
So let's say someone is doing landscaping in their house. They just bought a house. What would you suggest as far as where their landscaping should be? Should it be like a distance of like 8 feet?
Absolutely. Yeah, you got it. So a good landscape architect, right? They're going to come in, put like low watering, type, plants, low allergens, type plants, closest to the house on a drip system, things like that, with a good drainage system, of course, right? And then, you can get into all of your trees and flowers and all of your other vegetation further away from the house. Okay.
Mhm.
Because you want that foundation, you want that perimeter foundation of that house dry.
Okay. That's interesting. It's
Yeah.
all interesting. I'm going to be saying that.
Very important. This is really important. This is a big takeaway.
And then you go into the house, and now what do you
Yep.
do?
Yeah.
What do
So,
you
again, I know kind of the history from the clients, but I'm doing, I'm smelling.
Right.
A lot of the clients that I do work for, usually I'm not going to smell like perfumes and dyes from like
Mhm.
Febreze air
Mhm.
fresheners that are
Right.
highly toxic. If you have them in
Yes.
your home, get them out of your home. If you're using that in your laundry and your dryers, get rid of it. Get
Yeah.
rid of that stuff. So a lot of homes don't have that. I go and I inspect. But hey, is it musty smell? By the way, is there a crawl space? Is there a basement? Okay. Those are big pieces to the puzzle here. The slab on grade, it's a little easier to kind of go in there and inspect. Slab on grade is the concrete directly on, the ground. Okay.
So that would be slab on concrete, meaning that's a ranch home or a two-story home, but there's no basement. Is
No
that
basement.
no crawl space?
Okay.
Okay. Is
That,
that
that's,
common?
that's,
It seems like every house has a crawl space.
no, it just ranges. It's
Mhm.
just ranges, whatever the
Mhm.
region, whatever the builder, whatever the architecture was, no, there's just as much slab on grade as there probably is crawl space or basements. But basements and crawl space are suspicious because that's where humidity, moisture, water, intrusion, things can leak into. It's very susceptible to that. And so that's usually where a lot of the problems stem from. Okay. Just let's make note of that.
Right. And then so let's say you say this basement has so much mold, this crawl space has so much mold. How do you treat it?
Well, so I do mold inspections, but I'm not a mold inspector. So
Mhm.
even though I'm inspecting the home, I'm
Right.
the one that's coming in going, we need to bring in and we need to qualify the right type of a mold inspector
Mhm.
because there's a lot of mold inspectors. Some of them get it right, some of them don't.
I had
So,
that with the house in Hudson Valley. I had to
yeah.
have it took me 3 inspectors before I found one
There
who
you
really
go.
knew what he was
That's
talking about.
exactly, yeah. So working with like a building biologist that's an environmental consultant, we know what we're looking for, especially me as a builder, right? So then that's when I'm coming in and I'm qualifying a mold specialist at that point. So I'm not bringing a mold dog myself, I'm just looking at the building and the structure going, yeah, based upon the structure, these are your pain points. These are the issues. And I suspect that we have a mold situation going on here. I'll even do like a bore scope, I'll actually do a scope in the wall, so I can see behind the wall. I'll use
Mhm.
3D thermal imaging. I'll maybe even use a mold pump just to kind of get some immediate data for the client,
Mhm.
before we start going into the layers, just to kind of help pre-qualify if we're getting into like a mold issue. Okay.
A little later, I want to talk about if you were but not right now, if you were building a home from scratch, what you would do as far as mold prevention and making it healthier. And I'm sure a
Oh,
lot of it is
oh,
the
I'm
materials.
happy to share that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I would assume another place for mold is the bathroom. I mean, it's
Yeah. So any wet area, right? So
yeah.
bathroom, showers. Hey, it could be behind your washer. Maybe the drain was always leaking for the last 5 years and you never knew it because it's a big washer shoved into a cavity space that you're never pulling out and looking behind. And every time that water would drain, it would go behind the drywall and it started molding behind the drywall. I've seen some really severe cases like that. That's why it's important to pull that washer out time to time, even if it's annually. Make sure it's zip tied, it's strapped down. Make sure that drain line that goes down into the drain
Mhm.
is sealed properly. You'd be surprised how many I've seen leak that actually created mold, just as much as a bathroom. Okay.
Right.
Behind an ice maker and behind your dishwasher, under the cabinetry. Maybe there was a slow, your little angle stop valves to turn on your supply lines
Mhm.
for your faucets, for your hot and your cold, right? Those things can leak after time, right? Maybe those are leaking down into the wood. And, a lot of those cabinetries made out of pressed board or
Yeah.
different types of wood that are very susceptible to mold because all you need is the right amount of water, or moisture, the right amount of humidity and lack of air and a food source, wood, dust, all these different
Mhm.
types of things. You've got mold. Okay.
So any really qualified mold specialist would come in and would actually do that kind of inspection for you yearly?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, when I'm a
pull out
good
the
mold
paint
inspector,
and
yeah, a good mold inspector will do exactly what I'm talking
Mhm.
about, but you don't see, did your mold inspectors come in and explain what I just shared with you?
Yeah, and I thought they were good.
And and my goal is to teach the industry, like, this is what we should be doing. I get it. You're certified in mold inspection, but you need to be understanding a little more on the construction side of the building structure. Again, there's good ones out there that do. Okay. But there's a
Right.
lot that don't. They just come in, run an air pump, do some samples, on the behalf of, some kind of a remediation because you had flood damage and it was an insurance claim. They're not looking for mold,
Yeah.
just do the baseline. Okay. So,
And I think that many people in the older homes, especially, they all have like a musty smell to them. So it's like, that there's
yeah, that's
yeah,
the dead giveaway, like if
yeah.
there's a musty smell, period, there's mold, microbial growth going on somewhere, That's why if it's a basement and a crawl space, I start targeting right into those
Yeah.
areas, And again, because it ties into the whole landscape, right? So
Yeah.
imagine we have all these bushes and vines and shrubbery and drip system, over watering, and we have a basement and a crawl space and it doesn't have a good drain. Where's the water going? All that
Mhm.
moisture is going right under that space into, into those spaces, which creates a high humidity. And then the building mechanics, we call it stack effect. So single story, 2-story, basement, 2-story, what happens is all that moist, cool air rises up. It's exactly. And then some people like in the, some clients, the HVAC systems are down in the basement, right? And they're leaking, the ducts are leaking, the filters aren't sealing right. So I'm kind of painting this picture here of now I'm kind of even talking about the mechanical system, which is your heating and cooling
Yeah.
system. That's one thing that I'm going to look at. So if we're walking through our house virtually here, I'm walking in, I'm looking at all these wet areas, bathrooms, showers, toilets,
Yeah.
all wanting to know the history, looking for the obvious signs of bubbling of the paint, the swelling of the wood, the
I mean,
stains
even
of the
sometimes,
wall.
like, it's making me think when you go into older homes in the shower, and then when you lift up the shower cap, it's all moldy, like where the water drains, the drain in the shower. You
Yeah.
lift that, you see sometimes the black mold in there in the
Yeah,
shower
yeah,
while
yeah,
showering in this
yeah.
in the yeah.
It's good to dump some hydrogen peroxide down that drain time to time.
Uh-huh. Okay,
That's a
tip number 2, we have landscaping and hydrogen peroxide. Should you dump hydrogen peroxide down all your drains,
yeah,
kitchen,
yeah, you
everywhere?
can. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients that are very ill from mold that are recovering
Yeah,
and, they're freaked out about mold in the drains, so that's what they do. They put the
yeah.
hydrogen peroxide down into the drains.
That's
And then if you're gone from your house for a long time, this is a lot of people don't understand this. The P trap, so you got your drain, it has a U shape, and the P trap is designed to hold water to stop the sewer vapors from your septic or, the city sewer system from coming into the house, it's a very toxic gas.
yes.
Okay. And so if you're gone for a long time and no one's filling up those P traps,
Mhm.
that sewer gas is going to bypass and come right into the house, and it can make people very ill.
It's
That's
funny, as designers, we also do for people that have multiple homes. We just come in and we flush their toilets and turn their sinks on
There
several
you
times
have it.
a week.
There you
Yeah,
have run the showers. I mean,
yeah,
a lot. It's just funny because a lot of people do it for common practice. Just well, we don't want the house to smell, or
mhm.
creates a sour smell, so we're going to do this, and we're going to have somebody come in and check on our house. But it's like, yeah, we're doing it because we're keeping the potential of toxic sewer
Right.
gas from
So we're
coming into
good.
the house.
That's a good reason. Let's talk about radon,
Yeah,
because that's a big question for so many
yeah,
people. First, tell us in very simple terms, what is radon?
yeah. It's a radioactive gas. It's a natural gas that comes from the earth. You know, and it's high in different regions around the world. And so here in the United States, there's maps that show like the different levels of what would be concerned and things that you need to test for. It's a real threat. We can do some research on that, but it's like I think it's second highest to like
Cancer, lung cancer,
grant.
only to smoking. Yeah, smoking is
Yeah.
first and
Isn't
radon,
that crazy? Like
yeah.
think about that. Like a lot of people don't understand that.
Mhm.
And so you have to test for it. And I'm going to give everybody this is tip number 3.
Okay.
On Amazon and order a radon monitor.
I'll put it
Okay?
in the comments, guys, so
Yes. So, and don't waste your time or money paying somebody $400 to come in there to do a one-time test because it changes. The soil's very expansive. And so as soil heats and cools, the earth moves and pockets of radon come out of the ground different times, right? At different times of the year, depending on the soil. So yes, you can put a radon meter in there one time and get, okay, hey, it's, I measure it by picocuries and
mhm.
That's what we use. So yes, if somebody does come out and you pay $400 and you're at 5 picocuries, then yes, you need to take immediate action for radon remediation. So that is where an immediate test does help. But here's where I'm going with this. Save the $400, go on Amazon, spend $50 to $100, turn on that meter, and that meter is going to let you know right away what exactly how many picocuries are in that moment of time. But what's nice to have the meter is then you can measure it. So say it's low, and then over the 6 months, say it's that 2 picocuries. In 6 months, it could be all the way to 4 picocuries. Maybe it could be up to 8 picocuries. You don't know. That's why it's good to have a monitor in your home.
And should you have these monitors, should you have several throughout your home, or you just need one?
Yeah, you could do. Nah, I would do if you have a basement.
Yeah.
No, you just need one because we just need to know if
You would
it's
put it in the basement, in the lowest level of the floor.
correct.
Yeah.
And so if we have a basement, that's a way to really capture radon.
Yeah.
And then through that whole stack effect. And again, if the HVAC's downstairs, right? Imagine it's all getting sucked in and then it's just pushing up through the house, right? It's a serious thing. And
how do they treat it?
Radon mitigation is actually simpler than people think. It's just a matter of a company come in, like if there's a basement or if let's just say slab on grade, and what they'll do is they'll just drill a hole. They'll put a vent down under the concrete. They'll seal it. And then they'll hook it up to an induction fan, that's hooked up to a monitor. And then what it'll do is it'll suck that gas out. Because what happens is the concrete or the basement, it kind of blocks it until eventually it starts kind of coming in through cracks or through plumbing. And then it starts leaking in and then it's holding it into that space, right? So if there's a vent that goes up under that or down below that concrete with an induction fan, it's just sucking it. And then we plumb it outside of the roof line and away from the house.
Okay? I don't know if you know the answer to this, but with global warming, are more homes affected by radon, or that has nothing to do with it, just because it's coming from the earth and the earth is
And if there's any scientists on here, they might beat me up. So what I think it's fair to say that radon does move as tectonic plates are shifting and there's movement in the ground, right? The soil's going to shift, absolutely. But I mean, it might take millions of years to shift too. So.
You don't have to worry for the next 2-3 years at least.
But maybe next year we're coming on our 1 million year shift.
Yeah, this is true. Very good point. I also wanted to bring up with you EMF, mitigate EMF.
I love talking about EMF.
Okay, so you have to explain this in baby terms. What it is it real? Is it a scam?
No, it's real. So we have what's called a 60 hertz cycle, which is a waveform of power, of electricity that goes through your transformer, comes into your home, and it feeds all of the electricity, appliances and wall outlets and lights and all that through the house. We're not getting away from that. It just is what it is. But what it does is it delivers an electrical field. Okay, not a problem. It's nothing to be stressed about. It is a form of an EMF, but you don't want to be laying your head next to a wall outlet all night being electrically charged from this electrical field. It doesn't allow the body to get to that place of healing and homeostasis. There's a charge. It's vibrating 60 cycles per second. It's just physics of what electricity does, right? It's not deadly. Okay, that's just one form of an EMF, the electrical field, okay? Simple little takeaway. Okay, Brian, I don't want to sleep next to an outlet. What do I do?
So in other words, it's in all the outlets in the house.
Switches, wall outlets. So now you take your lamp, your double prong lamp on your headboard next to your bed. Okay, now you plug that in. Look at an electrical line like a plumbing line. There's electrons, water flowing through that line, right? All right, now I'm going to plug my lamp in. So I'm going to extend my plumbing into that, right? So now that electron's now flowing into that lamp. Imagine that lamp's plugged in, even not turned on, because say the switch is up high, right? And you're sleeping right next to that. You're sleeping next to an electrical field all night long.
So is that dangerous, sleeping next to an electrical field?
No, in my opinion, it's a stressor on the central nervous system.
Is that proven, or is that just we read so much about
it? The World Health Organization talks about it. The Bio Initiative report talks about it. Building biology talks about it. This is all proven. This is all factual things, okay? Now, but this isn't dangerous. And I'm just talking about one form of the EMF. The more dangerous form of an EMF is what's called an alternating current magnetic field, AC magnetic field. And,
Mhm.
a motor, the copper windings around a motor, you got the shaft spinning
Mhm.
around, common household motor. What those windings do is they put out a high electrical field. Okay.
Where are
So
those where are those copper?
your refrigerator has them, your
Mhm.
dishwasher has them, the blower motor to your furnace has one, transformers have them. Where I'm going with this is that's why when I'm doing the outside look, for power lines, I want to
Yeah.
make sure is my client's second story bedroom right next to a transformer, okay? That's
Mhm.
producing high amounts of electromagnetic fields. That's the dangerous one, okay?
Mhm.
Is my client's the way that this old 1950s home was designed is the refrigerator on the opposite side of a sleeping bedroom wall where somebody's laying their head all night long.
Mm.
That's a dangerous field to be in. Is the furnace, again, it's all part of the design. We want to make sure
Right.
that here's the takeaway: distance yourself from the field because the field drops exponentially. I can have a very dangerous field, and at 4 feet away, it drops off. Okay.
So if we have a bed, so for someone that's living in a 1950s home and they're not going to move, and let's say their bed is against the refrigerator wall, then just moving the bed to the opposite wall if
There
possible.
you go. That simple.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Maybe it
And
might not look good. Maybe, it feels uncomfortable, but it's a solution.
and do we know what these stressors, what they physically can do to the body?
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
we
Electrical magnetic fields is linked to leukemia. Direct
Mhm.
link. I've been studying this for 30 years.
And
There's lots of
what
literature on it.
what about the outlets? Let's say you have, like you say, the table lamps next to the
Yeah.
bed. Is there
So,
anything you can do for the outlets, the existing outlets?
there's a lot of things, not to get too deep in the weeds, and we can talk about this later on, but they make these remote control boxes that go onto the electrical panel. And so the circuit, so say the bedroom circuit, right?
Mhm.
You can hook this remote control up to that bedroom circuit, have an infrared remote and actually hit the remote and kill the circuits to the whole bedroom. Or you can manually go outside, identify what circuit is powering that bedroom, and just go in there and manually turn it off at night. I have clients that do that, that cannot be exposed to any field of
Right,
EMF, right?
right.
So that's what they have to do. But as a builder, I would just build a kill switch into the wall. So if the client decides, hey, you know what? I just want a low EMF environment, I'm just going to hit the switch and turn it off. That's my choice. That's simple.
So at
Okay.
night, they would just turn it off or yeah.
Yeah, turn and have a wooden bed frame. So remember, we're 80% water, right? So we're
Mhm,
going to absorb energy. Does that make sense now?
mhm.
So if we're sleeping next to an electrical source, we become charged because we're water. We're the conductor. So if you have a metal bed frame, what is metal? A conductor. So imagine you have outlets 2 feet up off of your wall where you plug
Right.
your lamps into. We call them courtesy outlets. Now
Mhm.
imagine you have a metal bed frame right up against inches away from that wire. What is it doing? It's energizing that metal bed frame. It's energizing it. It's conducting the electrons through, charging it to a positive charge. Right?
Would an upholstered bed frame work or
Wood.
as long as the frame itself is the inside
Or
frame
wood.
is wood?
Yeah, because it'll break the conduction. It'll reduce the fields.
And fabric is fine too then, right?
Yeah, fabric.
Yeah,
Yeah, as
that's
long as
really
it's
interesting.
not metallic fabric.
Right. We'll keep the metallic out of it.
And kind of moving on to so I'm kind of explaining the different little pieces. I
Yeah.
think these are good takeaways for our audience here to understand. So then you have radio frequency, radio, cellular, Bluetooth, wireless, cell
Mhm.
phones, decked phones, baby monitors. These are all wireless devices that emit, some of them like 2.4 gigahertz, 5G, cellular, 5G, cell towers, 4G. Like 4G is not as powerful, but still, you don't want to be holding your phone. That's why we have a
Yeah.
disclaimer on all the manufacturers. Do not put the phone to your head, right? Because it's vibrating at a high frequency and it's penetrating, it's breaking the blood brain barrier. Okay. There's all kinds of studies on that too.
So in today's world, we all have all of this stuff.
That's
So I
right.
guess I'm thinking the takeaway here, probably what you're gonna say, I don't know, is just keep them out of the bedroom?
Yeah, the real simple stuff is for first and foremost, if you're using a cell phone and you got wireless earbuds, throw those things away. Please do yourself a favor. I can measure them. Believe me, I've been doing this a long time. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't get into all that stuff. But when you learn the building biology and you learn about EMFs, and I've spent 2 years doing a deep dive and understanding these things. I have all the meters. We've measured all of these earpieces.
Yeah.
What they are, they put out a high frequency. It's not a big power source. It's a small power source, but you're putting it in the ear canal. Okay. Or the same thing with the phone. You're holding it against your head. Get some earbuds. If you're charging your phone at night, if you can, try to use a landline. I'm not going to go into all the things that you can do, but whether it's a VoIP or a landline phone, take your phone, put call forwarding on, put your phone in airplane mode. I mean, these are just simple takeaways that you can.
So earbuds are fine?
Yeah, the wired. They make these air tube ones, but I don't like them. But yeah, the wired earbuds. Some people that are very sensitive don't agree with me on that, but so. But it's way better than holding your phone, to your ear. And then also too, your wireless. Here's another takeaway. Your wireless device that's carrying all of these signals, for convenience and Wi-Fi, turn it off at night.
Right.
Okay. I can help all of your members here design an EMF-free environment just using modern technologies, but we don't have time to go into that. So I'm just kind of giving the simple little takeaways to be cognizant of going, oh, okay, hey, at least or also too, say again, I'm walking up to the house. I see a cell tower next door. Yeah. I'll have my meters, I'll be measuring everything when I'm doing this home inspection, by the way, just to give those pointers. Hey, pull the bed away from this wall, or shut this breaker off, or hey, turn the Wi-Fi off at night, or hey, that cell tower is blasting right through your wall on your children's bedroom, or your baby's monitor is right above their head. We need to turn these things off. We need to hardwire them. We need to shield things. There's strategies for everything.
It's amazing.
And that's an RF. And then one final little piece on the EMF piece here. Then, for your audience that's heard of dirty electricity or electrical magnetic interference, what is that? What it is, it's the fourth part of the EMF puzzle. And what it is, it's harmonics. It's noise. So we have this 60 hertz cycle of electrons flowing through the house of just to say clean power. Well, once you start plugging in power supplies and motors and transformers and electrical or solar panels from inverters from your neighbors and pool pumps, what it does is it throws noise and interference into the line. And some people that are very sensitive, they can actually hear it's an audible noise, like a very high pitched.
Right. Almost
Yeah, exactly. Like, even if you don't hear it, there's all kinds of research and studies how it shows that it stresses the nervous system. So is it detrimental? Are you going to die from it? No, but your body's not going to get to a place of
it's a stressor.
Yeah, 100%. So that's kind of like the fourth piece to the whole puzzle. Again, for your whole audience, there's all kinds of takeaways for everything that I talk about. It's just being aware, educated, understanding what they are. It's like the science is all emerging. This is all coming forward now. We're all learning. And that's why it's not a fad. It's not a trend. It's not something else to be scared of.
No, not at all. It is here and now, I say, which is great. Brian, thank you so much. Really, I want you to come again for another interview.
Well, we got to talk about water and building science.
Yeah, so much to talk about.
There's a lot of things we still need to talk about.
Endless. Thank you so much. Yeah, next time I would love to talk about water. Definitely water. Okay, everyone, listen. Next time about water.
You're welcome. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and if you want to get in touch with
Brian, everyone.
Yeah, and if you want to get in touch with Brian, Synergy 360.
Yeah, SENERGY 360.
I'll put it also in the comments.
We're building 20 homes, so you can visit our development too. So
that's a lot of houses.
Yeah.